And we're live. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Montessori show. And we've just got 1 minute to go before we actually really start the show. Hi, Jeanne-Marie, how are you?
I'm good, very good. Thank you. Live from San Diego. And so today we have a little technical issue. So we are just with the flow, just parenting all about is just being flexible and adapting ourselves. We have Simone in Amsterdam, who is actually hosting and being the technical, but she's not able to hear us. So we're just going to play around with it. And then we have Pamela Green, who is our wonderful guest today, to talk about Montessori, the prenatal life through childbirth and postpartum. So welcome, Pamela, to the show.
Thank you. I'm very, very happy to be here. I have been watching your show for every session, and I'm just so excited to be with both of you. I just to share a little bit about myself. I'm a Montessorian since about the early 80s. Got involved in Montessori. I'm a Montessori teacher and consultant. I also am a Montessori parent. I have 2 sons. My oldest is going to be 30, which seems impossible, but is true. And he is a Montessori teacher himself, as well as our daughter-in-law. So both our boys went up through Montessori school, actually in the school that I was teaching. So I did that, and I guess for me, key moments in my life, one of them would be when in 1981, I was studying in college for elementary ed, and we went to visit a Montessori school to just see an alternative. And I went in there, and you know how you have a moment that's a life-changing moment that just hit me like a different world that I was in, but it was a world that was familiar to me, even though I hadn't seen it before. And I was so, first of all, they were just children, and I saw no adults, and I wasn't sure what was happening. And then children were coming and welcoming me and showing me around, and I just fell in love, and I felt so in my heart and touched by all of it. And I just left there, and it was just supposed to be a field trip. And for me, it was my ending of being in traditional education training. And I went to my advice.
Yeah, and how fortunate of you to have discovered that early on. That's for me, on a personal note, that has always been my little regret, is to have discovered Montessori later, because my second was already 4 years old when I started my Montessori studies. And to me, it's just so beautiful that not only you discovered that, you know, as before being a parent, but then I just love that your son has followed in your footsteps and is a teacher himself in the Montessori community. That is just so wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you. Yeah. So it's kind of sad because we're seeing Simone, but we don't know. We don't know what's going on.
I know.
So this was supposed to be a 3-way conversation, but that's okay.
Right. Right.
So just to get us started on this topic that we wanted to really approach today, because as you know, the Montessori show, we really want to answer everybody's question around Montessori. You know, what does it mean? How can we adapt our homes and ourselves and so forth for different ages? And today we really wanted to have you here because you have really spent a lot of time and effort into really bringing Montessori to the prenatal life and to expecting parents. And so I would really like if you could touch a little bit more on that and why, I mean, how, you know, why is it so important to start so early on? And, you know, oftentimes people ask us, you know, what age is Montessori for? And I say, you know, from conception until university studies. And you are, you know, you're doing it really from conception. So I would love for you to talk a little bit more about that whole connection that we have with our unborn child.
Right. Yes, I agree with you that it's our paths as parents begin during the time of pregnancy. And for all the years that I taught in Montessori, and for many years I was head of school and did that administrative work, but through all of that I was also attending births during that whole time. And I just realized for myself during pregnancy that there were opportunities then to connect with my child and to communicate. And there were ways that I knew that was happening, and that there was ways for me to understand that I didn't have to wait until my baby was born to be with my baby. And so I discovered that in my own process. And then just through helping women as a birth doula and a midwife for many years, just seeing them through their process and helping just offer ways to connect and to communicate with our child while they're still inside of us, and to understand that they have we have a very full sensory life when we're unborn. We're born. We're not really, I don't even like the word unborn.
Right.
We exist and we are living a life, and then we live a life outside once we're born. So that to me is very, very important, and it's a passion of mine, and just to support parents through that, and then through the birth, the labor and the birth process to, you know, especially after the birth with the baby, to one of the key things in Montessori and with birth that I find is exactly the same is observation. And that we learn. I mean, I learned about birth through observation.
Of course.
And I learned about children through observation. And there's no difference in it to me. And the things that disturb and interrupt and stop the process, that's a natural process in the child. Learning is the same in women and babies during the labor and birth process. So
yes. So let's focus on let's go in the, you know, the process basically. What are some of the ways that we can connect and communicate with our the child that we are carrying? How do you encourage families to do that, both mother and father, or other parenting partner, to really already be in contact and feel connected?
Well, I mean, one of the ways is to learn about the gestation, to learn what's happening physically in the process of development. But that's important to me, but that's not the most important thing. I assist and give opportunities through the sense of, even the practice of touching for the woman to touch her belly and to feel the connection to her child and to feel her baby respond to that touch. And there's usually a physical response to that. So through touch for the mother, through touch for the father, through, of course, talking to our child as if they were living, which they are, and to speak to them as full beings, and to share, to not have that disconnect between pregnancy and then birth. So talking, touching, music, singing, reading, massage, doing, you can learn how to do your own pregnancy massage on your own belly. You can do that, and you can learn the ways that your baby responds to your touch through their movement. And babies feel our touch. Babies respond by moving up more towards our hands, even when the hands are hands that they know. And when the hands are hands that they don't know, you'll feel a baby move away. So they're so sensitive.
I know, it's amazing. I don't know if it's, I know it's not prevalent in the US, but in Europe, there is something called aptonomy. I don't know if you've heard it. And it's this, the science of touch. And to me, for my first child that I had in France, that was just part of the whole, prenatal life, is to learn these techniques of aptonomy. And to me, it was just fascinating how my child was responding to her father and to her father's touch. And every night they had this ritual where, he would call her and she would come and press, and it was just amazing. And then when she was born, he was really the one that had the touch to calm her, because she had been used to that little, touch that we had initiated all through pregnancy. So yes, it is so important to have that communication. How do you suggest that fathers who sometimes may feel a little bit kind of out of the loop, because we as mothers, we're carrying the child, we're feeling it in our body and all of this, how do you encourage the other parenting partner to really feel connected and communicate with this child that is being carried by the mother?
In many of the same ways we have our babies inside of us, so we have a very unique experience that they can't have, but they can be through touch. They can be also just talking to their baby. They can, studies have shown that babies respond very differently to the deep resonance of the father's voice, and any partner has a different resonance, whether it's males or females, so they respond a little differently even in that situation, in those experiences. And I love what you just shared about with your child and your husband, because there are, if it is a male partner, studies have shown that there's relationship for going to sleep and relaxation, that babies and infants respond differently to the sound of that father's voice than they do to the mother's. And so practices like that, singing, sharing music, if anyone cares to do that. Singing, I think, is a phenomenal way. There's one of my most inspiring birth keepers is Michaud Audant.
Oh yes,
Phenomenal. He's now 86 years old. Such a lovely being, and he, years ago when he was in Paris, when he had his hospital, he had weekly singing groups, and all of his mothers had to come to the group, but it wasn't just for the mothers, it was for the mothers and the fathers, and they would all come and they would sing. And it was this just beautiful gathering that happened, and it was weekly, and just reading about it and seeing it, it just seemed like the most beautiful thing. So it has a beautiful way of coming together in community. But the other thing with voice is for birth, with vocalization, and with our jaws, our jaw structure, when it's loose and when we vocalize and when we sing, is directly related to our cervix.
Huh.
So we want, so singing, you know, even in labor, if someone is, I get a sense that there's maybe some holding back or something's going on, and we've talked about this prior. This might be something that just will be maybe suggested lightly, but organically can happen as well, which is really the way that is the most beautiful to me.
So you're saying that through childbirth is to be able to sing and to vocalize, and not like a lot of what we see in the media is just screaming and you know, kind of not it's not very different.
It's not
yeah, beautiful.
Yeah. And then the other thing for the father is, one of the things I do in my pre-birth classes is we all have our own an ancestral or generational story that we bring into our pregnancy and our birth. And it's unique for the father and it's unique for the mother. And it's our story that we have heard, and it's cultural, but it's part of the family. And so fathers have their same stories that they've carried in. So I like to do a lot of work with art, with drawing, and with clay, and with even belly casting, which is a way to make a cast on a belly, and then you can paint it or whatever. But for both parents, one thing that I think is really, and I did this myself without even knowing that what I was doing, I just did it naturally. But I talked to my mother, I talked to my about birth to find out what it meant to them. And for the fathers as well, one of the things we do in the pre-birth class is they kind of gather information. And even if the parents are no longer living, they bring their own thoughts or understandings about pregnancy and birth. And we do that with art, and we do that with many different experiences.
Yeah, and to me that is so important, because I remember you know, again, I'm just bringing it back to my personal experience, but I remember the first day of a prenatal yoga class that I was taking in Paris. The instructor asked us each, what have you been told about your own birth? And to me, that was just very important in understanding what I had been told about how I came to this world was affecting the way that I was perceiving what I was to experience. And I remember, you know, my mother had told me just wonderful, beautiful, you know, what a joy it was. And then there were some other women in the room that had been told it was just, you know, the most horrible, excruciating, you know, horrible experience. And you could feel the fear, you could feel the anticipation in, you know, in the different ways that we had been told this story. So that's fascinating of how, you know, that's going to affect also the way that we welcome our own child. So very important to be aware of that. Yeah.
And to be able to rewrite our story. You know, we don't have to, that is our, it's not really our story. It is our history,
Right.
maybe, but it's something that we can look at, and it can impact us in that moment, and then we can begin a process of writing our own story. And I think it really brings into thought what discernment we want to take and who we want to be with, who we want to gather together to support us. And, you know, there's all this talk about who's our tribe now, that tends to be words that are used, but I think it's really important. And we're greatly influenced by stories that other people have. And as for mothers and fathers during pregnancy, to really protect themselves in a way from that influence, so that they're creating their own unique journey.
Yes, very important. And I like the fact that you're also asking the fathers what their story is, or like you say, what their history is. It's not their story, but it's just what they've been told, and that opportunity to rewrite it, or to, you know, begin what our parenting story is going to be about. So wonderful. What was I going to say? So we do have some other questions that have come in that I would love to talk about. So we've talked a bit about the prenatal life and how we can, you know, stay connected and really engage in that bonding before our child is earthside. Then there's also, you know, this whole notion, and in Montessori, you know, as we know, we are so, you know, how do you say, focused on preparing the environment. And so for me, prenatal life and that environment is so important. But then can you talk about the birth environment and why that is important, and what are maybe your recommendations as to, you know, what would be kind of an ideal birth environment?
Well, it's unique for each person, but it does, whether you birth at home, whether you birth in a birth center, which in my area we don't have, but or a hospital, there are things that, you know, come up as important to me is trust and feeling safe, feeling that this is a place where you have freedom, feeling that this is a place where you are, where you can birth, but also that you have others who trust birth. Because there are, it's such a difference being in an environment where you just feel that there is distrust in birth and in the natural, or there's a worry or the anticipation that something could happen, which of course in birth anything can happen. No matter where you're at, anything can happen. But choosing your caregiver, choosing where you want to birth are the two most important things. I think that we make decisions as for parents, two of the most important things. But as Michelle O'Don points out, that is just the beginning of it. That's like that is like choosing maybe your Montessori school. And then you have your work. So he really makes a point of, it is not then you make that choice and you hand things over. You become an active participant, and you become active in looking at what you want, what your options are, what you, one of his things that he believes is that we don't have to do anything for a woman in labor other than stay out of the way.
So true. So true.
And to not disturb her. And so, I started over all these years of doing Montessori and birth, I was like, oh my God, it's the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's absolutely the same thing. And in birth, the hormones that are released are incredible. I mean, during pregnancy, but also during the labor and birth process. And we are mammals, and we respond the same as any other mammal, and we want to be in a place that's safe. We want to be in a place where we feel that we're not going to be disturbed. We want to be in a place that is protected, and a lot of times a small space with dim lights, with soft voices, with freedom of movement, with the ability to choose our own work, which we could say is our own position or whatever's natural to us. And so that's part of the environment to me, is all of those things.
Yeah, and I think what you're saying, and I really want to emphasize, is the fact that we do have choices, and that as a woman who is expecting a child and who is about to give birth, we are so mighty powerful and so healthy and strong. And I just have such an issue with the medical community treating, women as they're, because they're entering into like a, for those born in hospitals, kind of like, oh, you're ill, or you need help. And it's true, what you were saying. It's just, let the woman, do what she needs to do. Her body is wise and knows, and we are so strong, and to really be assertive about our choices. We do have choices. If we want the lights dimmed, we can ask for them, and we, need to ask for it and not feel that, we're a burden, or we're, not in our position to ask. I think that we're just so powerful. I mean, we're giving life to another human being, for heaven's sakes, So yeah.
It's very, very powerful, and it's, to not let the technique be more important than the connection, which can happen at home, it can happen in the hospital. So the technique being the management, being the protocol, being the worry or the concern that's held. The words that are used are extremely important, just as they are with the child. We can use words that are, I'll give an example like that from a midwifery, from a midwifery perspective. There's a time in labor where, and you mentioned it, where we're very powerful, and it's a time where women can be maybe starting to get more verbal. Sometimes they do, starting to vocalize or just make these noises or be more moving and things like that. And there have been many studies that have shown that this is the time when, if someone enters in, even if a woman has said, I really want to try, I want to come to you if I want some pain medication. But this is the time when pain medication is usually offered, is when a woman is coming into her true power or her absorption in her process. And how it's so sad to me and interesting at the same time how when that's offered, it's like almost with a child, if you enter in and you say something and they're doing something and then someone comes in and makes a comment, they may come out of this almost trance-like state they're in, and then because they're very open, they may even think I'm doing something wrong, or maybe there's something, and then get pulled out of where they are. So it's really interesting to me, and if you look at environment physically, and the environment of birthing, and you go into it, and I suggest this to my parents, wherever they're going to birth, if they're going to birth at home or they're going to birth in the hospital, to go and look at that place objectively and see what's there. And around in my area, when you go into the hospital room, the key thing that you see is the bed in the middle of the room. So what options are available for choices and freedom of movement and freedom of choice, even in that. So to look at what's available in the environment, and the same as we would do in Montessori, if we go into a space and it seems very externally predicted, like what the child should be doing. So all of those things are very important, but the words that we're using, the capacity for others to have trust, to use low voices, to come to the person and enter in quietly and gently, to give lots of space, and to observe the whole process of it, because there are ways that we can physically measure labor that I don't pay any attention to, because I'm observing where she is. And a woman can move from, we measure with dilation, so if you're at 1 centimeter, somebody can move from there to the baby being born in an hour, depending on what her process is. So just like with the child, we watch for what readiness there is, and then we enter in and we offer our guidance to really keep the focus on the child and the woman, rather than any measurements that we can use. So that's important.
Right. We do have some questions that came in
Okay.
that I will ask. I know one of them you did answer about listening to music and the voice and all of that. The other one was, and this is for you know, a young baby, is how to stimulate but not overstimulate. And are there signs babies can give us beside rubbing their eyes that they are maybe you know, tired or overstimulated? What is your take on that?
Well, I think one of the greatest opportunities we have with our infants from the moment they're born is a practice of being with this person rather than having to do something, and to really observe and see and get a sense of, I mean, I feel like our babies are giving us lessons right away. They're giving us lessons. And can we be open to that? And can there be space for that? And can there be time for that? And all of our babies are different in how they tell us things about themselves. So to watch those, and I, you know, in the parent-infant group that I have, I start with newborns, and one of the things we do is the observation journal. So we're taking observation of what we're seeing objectively. So we get to know then what are some signs or lessons that our baby's giving us on what are the cues. So, and also then how do we respond to those cues?
And what would be some of the cues, like for somebody who hasn't had the experience you have, that would, you know, help a new parent maybe detect cues?
Well, there are cues that are feeding cues. So if we are breastfeeding or even if we're bottle feeding, to watch for what those would be. And I work with those right away with new parents to try to watch and observe so that we enter into our guidance of our child early on in that process, so it doesn't lead to a time of stress, like feeding, for example. It doesn't lead to the time of a baby really crying and getting agitated. So the same thing would be with anything with the child. So rubbing the eyes, pulling the ears, looking around. Let's say we've nursed the baby and then the baby starts to fuss, or the baby's moving into a different experience. The baby may, of course, you can have a checklist of things. The baby may need to be changed. The baby may need to be moved to a different environment. The baby may need to be laid down so that they have freedom of movement. And that to me is that's the one that gets missed so much. It's so, I mean, I missed it with my own children. I know many times, especially with our second, who had, you know, what would be the classic colic. And I think of him, and so many times we probably could have, I mean, we would lay him down and let him have freedom of movement, but that didn't come to my mind as a first thing. And just the need for new beings to explore. They're in water and they're moving. So the minute they're born, what is this like? To be in the world, and I move my body, and what does this feel like? And I'm bumping into things. And so to not you know, to not swaddle in the ways that are still used babies that get swaddled, the first one thing they want to do is they're going to get their arms out because they want to have freedom. So, you know, I guess those are some things that are, if a baby begins to seem, I mean, we overlay what we think a baby's feeling. So we may say the baby's fussy, or the baby's upset, or the baby's tired. How do we know that's true? We don't know what they are. But
Right.
we can try different things. And one of the first things I would say is freedom of movement. And also to be with a different person. It's a wonderful opportunity for that partner to be with the baby at those points, to learn their own way. You know, fathers, for example, have these ways that they hold babies that are fully different than the way females do. It's a natural thing they do. They tend to raise babies up more over their shoulder, and put pressure then on the baby's stomach with their shoulder, and so the head's kind of hanging over, which can really help with digestion and things. So to hand the baby over, freedom of movement, going outdoors, different environment, and also to not overstimulate.
Okay.
I'm very, I think it's so important that new families have a nest that is their time to be with the baby, that other than their caregivers, that is their time, and that they really, this can be a father or a partner's work to be the protector then of the mother and the baby.
So Pamela, there's another question that's come in from Miriam, and she actually has a beautiful line about communication, and she said, I really love talk my baby by imitating her talk, and she loves it. This makes me really feel connected to her because it's that interaction. That's beautiful. But she asks you, what do you think is the most in the first 3 months of life? What in the, I guess, in the development of the child, what would you say is the most important thing to first 3 months?
For the first 3 months, well, to have that time that is protected, that is time for you to just get to know each other, to the three of you, if there's a partner, so the three of you, and to explore who you are together, to have care of the mother, physical care of the mother, feeding, getting proper nourishment, and with the baby to just spend time that is leisurely and is and I always like to call the bed the nest, and to be together and to talk, see how the baby responds. I talk to babies just as I would to any friend. I talk not, I mean, we tend to, as humans, make our voices a little different when we talk to babies, but just to talk to them about who you are, who they are, what's happening in simple ways, and to spend time just day to day observing the changes that you're seeing. And again, that is why I feel journaling is helpful, to just a little bit each day to write a little bit about what you're seeing. I like women to be in a nest period for even the first month, if possible. 2 weeks for sure, but I think it's important to not have people coming in, to not have others, other than bringing food and supporting the family in that way, to have that time together. To not feel that, to realize how precious that time is, how quickly it goes, it passes so quickly. And I mean, in the first 3 months, many changes are happening. So then we watch for the baby, we watch for their ability to see is different. It grows day by day. So we can incorporate in Montessori, we can incorporate the early mobiles, and the baby, I mean, we've all seen this, but I remember having an infant here who was about 2 weeks old, and had him down on the movement mat, and he was there with the first mobile for 45 minutes, just totally absorbed and talking and having his time. So to allow babies to have their time, and for the mother and the father to have care of themselves. We are a culture that does not support parents after a baby is born. It doesn't happen here. So we have to create that for ourselves. And that's one of the parts of pregnancy that I work with, is how can that family begin to create care for themselves if they don't have the extended family close? How can they create care for themselves in those first, that symbiotic period, first couple months after birth? So,
Right.
I mean, talking
Right.
to the baby, baby massage is wonderful. And you can learn, there are books you can learn to do that. You can also go online and learn step by step how to do that.
So yeah, so the
direct-
first 3 months, and as our viewer was saying, for her it was really the bonding, and you're confirming that it's just it's getting to know each other. It's really you know, the importance of, we're creating a family, and so we are, you know, needing to know each other, and you know, I like you emphasizing that we need time to do that, and that you know, for me, the parents that I work with that are expecting, I really try to get them to think about, you know, clearing their calendar for 8 weeks after birth, and to just, you know, you're going into your mama cave, and you need to really, you know, nourish yourself and take care of yourself, and all of that. So so yeah, well, this there's I know a few more questions. There's a comment here. Let me see here. I know a lot of people don't allow yourself and family members to hold baby in hands for too long because they're afraid that the child will get used to it and dependent. What do you think? Like this notion of, you know, spoiling a baby, that, you know, if you hold them too much, you're gonna spoil them. What's your take on that?
Well, Montessori talked about, you know, that we're not ready to be independent when we're born. So that the 9 months after the birth being the external pregnancy, and babies, they are with us. They are still part of our, especially with the mother, they're still part of our body in a way that they're independent and they're their own person, but they also need us. And, you know, looking back to even what we talked about with the cues of the baby and learning about how they communicate to us. What are they saying? What might they be needing? We're not ready. So we have to be held. We have to feel safe. We need even the breastfeeding or feeding experience is an experience of communication. So anytime that we're with our baby, we're communicating to them in all different levels. I mean, for myself and for the parents that I've been with, that, you know, that's a pretty common theme sometimes that they've heard, and people will say, oh, don't pick up the baby again, you're going to spoil it. Well, to me, that has more to do with that person's story, maybe in their whatever it is, than it does with the reality of it. So I always say to those parents, so, okay, if you you have your own experience of this, and how does it feel if you would practice that? Or sometimes they might come to me and say, you know, people kept telling me that, so then when the baby was crying, I didn't go and get the baby, and just how that felt, and their own instinct on what was true for them.
Right.
So the instinct of the maternal and the paternal or the partner instinct is what can be followed.
Yeah, and I think that you know, I love that you say that, because to me that cannot be more emphasized, that if we are in tune with our, you know, instincts and to follow them, we will do right by our child, we will do right by ourselves. And I know for a fact that I wish I knew all of this, you know, 20 years ago when I had my first child, because there was so much information that I was given by my elders, or like you say, their story, that today I know I would do things very differently. And so it's you know, it's fascinating that, you know, I really, really want to encourage those that are maybe listening to this and that are expecting to really be in tune with your instincts. You know what your child needs, and I truly, strongly believe that we cannot spoil a newborn child, an infant. We do not spoil them. We are just responding to their needs. So very important. Very important. Yes.
Yeah, the only thing I'll add to that is there is a way that sometimes, you know, I believe one way to be with the child is there are so many materials now that you can use for that. So you can carry a baby. I mean, it's an ancient tradition. We're not
actually, Pamela, there's actually a question that just came in about baby carriers.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay,
wonderful.
good.
So what, and was asking, what do you think about that, and can that be maybe overdone or not? So wonderful that you're talking about that.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I have a friend that I helped her with her birth, and she is from Pakistan. And one thing that after her baby was born, I mean, she's Muslim, and so they had their fabric material that she just used as actually a belly wrap, and then also as a baby wrap. And we were talking one day, and she said, you know, it's just so funny to me how culturally in this country this seems like a new thing, and it's been around forever. So I thought that was we talked about that. But you know, it is a way for us our babies to be close, and there are many different products out there now compared to when my first son Seth was born. There was one baby carrier. We used it a lot. We used it very much, and my husband used it probably even more than I did. The one thing I will say about that I have noticed is that sometimes babies are in there maybe too long, and that there is, again, the freedom of movement time that they can have. And so I talked to them.
And that's actually the next question is,
Yes.
can it be used too long, and what would be your advice as to when to maybe, move on to something else, and is it when they start moving on their own and such? So what's your take on just maybe the length of use of those baby carriers?
One question I always ask myself is, whose needs are being met? Whose needs are being met? And I remember years ago when I was head of school at a school, and a woman came in and she had her child in a baby carrier, and it was probably the first time that I asked myself that question in regards to parenting already. But I was looking at her, and that child wanted out of the carrier. He wanted to move, and he was, I think, at the point of crawling. And she just kept him there. And I finally said to her, what I'm noticing is that it seems that he wants to explore. It seems that he wants to be free. And there was resistance in her about that.
Yeah. So to ask that question, whose needs are being met, that's a very, very powerful one. Thank you. Yeah. And somebody mentions your thoughts on the use of the tamponcino. And for, you might want to explain for maybe viewers who don't know what a tamponcino is. I mean, among Montessorians, we know what that is. But she says that I love to hold my baby in the tamponcino and realize that she calms down easily. To me, it is comparable to being in utero. What are your thoughts?
I think they're wonderful. To just describe them a little bit in simple ways, I would describe it as a little pillow or a quilted material that is simple, that is of natural fabric, that is familiar and stays with the baby. So when the baby's held, it can be underneath, and it can be a way for the baby to feel a little more secure, so that their legs are not flopping or their arms are feeling secure. When they're laid down, they can be on the tamponcino as well. And when they are, so it's familiar. It has their smell. It has the mother's smell. It has the father's smell. It has the family smell. And so then when we get to the point where there are other family members, when it's that time that we're allowing them to hold the baby, that is a familiar thing that can travel with them as they're holding the baby, and with younger siblings as well. I think it can work out beautifully. And when Seth was born, I didn't have that. I had been in Montessori, but I didn't know about that part of it. But a friend of mine had made this thing, which was that, and I didn't even know if it was that. But that's what it was. And so we used it, and I noticed right away. So wherever I went, I had it with me, and it was home. It was home for him.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And for those who might be interested in making one, there are some instructions, and we'll put the link below. But it's basically a little security pillow to carry our infants those first few weeks, and it can easily be made or bought. So yes, wonderful. Well, Pamela, I mean, we could go on for a long time, and I know there were other things we wanted to talk about and such, but that just means we'll have to have this conversation again. But we are kind of wrapping up on our hour together, and I have some new questions we already talked about that. To just wrap up, and maybe if you want to have some words of, kind of closure around, your work and Montessori and birth and postpartum, and just, I really appreciate the time that you've given us today to probably, inform some of our viewers that, Montessori does start very early on. And just how wonderful it is to incorporate that from the very beginning.
Yes. Well, to me, Montessori is about learning to be present and learning to be in relationship. Those are key things to me, and part of my own self-work. And the being in Montessori and her teachings have helped me profoundly in that area. So, in pregnancy, to find ways, actually, I know that things are backwards when we show them, but one of my favorite books right now in birthing is called Mindful Birthing. I'm just going to show it, but it's backwards.
No, I see it fine. No, I see it fine.
Okay.
Can you lift it up just a little bit? Lift it up. Birthing, mindful birthing. Yes, training the mind, body, and heart for childbirth and beyond. Okay, thank you. And we'll put the link. We'll put the link below for people who are interested. Lovely, thank you.
Yeah, it's very in alignment with Montessori. I guess what I would say is, whatever we can do in ourselves, whatever practices we have that bring us into a still place in ourselves where we can be as present in the moment, so that we have those practices for labor and birth, and to be in relationship with our child and with others. Because to me, there's nothing in the world that brings us more in the present moment than does especially labor and birth. Because we can do whatever we can do whatever we do, but it can be helpful to learn ways to be as present with each contraction and to meet it. And it's a process of surrendering. It's a process of acceptance. It's a process of welcoming. And it's a process of being receptive. And to me, those are the key intentions for me as a parent, and the key intentions for me that I hopefully can bring to my parents in my work in parent infant and with birth, which I have found now fully merge, and so that's why I started my own program. Yeah.
Well, wonderful. Yeah. It's been really delightful to have you on the show today, Pamela, and thank you for
so much.
All the beautiful work that you're doing with birth and Montessori and merging the two. I mean, I just love how everything is so connected. Thank you very much.
You are very welcome. Thank you, and it's such a joy to see you.
Yes.
And Simone.
and yes, I'm sorry, Simone. Thank you for your presence, for your you were there. You sent me your question. She was our tech person in incognito. I mean, not incognito because she's there, but we had technical difficulties, so we couldn't hear each other. But you're here, and thank you everybody for joining us today, and see you next month.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.